I am so excited to talk to best-selling author Amy McLaren, who will talk to us about how to turn your passion into purpose. Let me briefly introduce her before I bring her on. Amy McLaren is a wife, busy mom of two, CEO, and now best-selling author. She splits her time between leading Lady Strength, a growing online community of driven entrepreneurial women, growing an Airbnb business, and being a hands-on CEO of Village Impact, the charity she and her husband founded more than a decade ago. Village Impact partners with communities in rural Kenya to provide community-led access to quality education and entrepreneurship opportunities. To date, Village Impact has built 14 schools that deliver education to nearly 5,000 students daily. Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Great to see you.
Good having you. So I just quickly introduced you. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background and what got you on this path?
Yes, my name is Amy. I used to be a teacher. I'm a teacher turned entrepreneur. I have three passion-led businesses that I run at the moment. My first one is my nonprofit called Village Impact, where we build schools in Kenya in partnership with the Kenyan government. And then my second passion project, passion business it's called Lady Strength, and I help entrepreneurs get out of their comfort zone and lead a business and a life that they truly love, and that's the Lady Strength brand. And then most recently is my real estate. We've always invested in real estate, my husband and I as a couple, but recently that's all been long-term real estate, but we're getting into the short-term market, and I just recently opened a short-term Airbnb that I'm really, really enjoying, and bringing that experience to guests that come stay with us. So aside from working on my three businesses, I have two little ones at home. I have a 10-year-old daughter that I swear every day, and I've said this many times, is going on 25 and she's 10. And I have a little guy named Sam, he's 7. And we adopted him from South Africa when he was 1. So he's with us now, and he'll be 8, which is crazy, in January. And then of course, married to my wonderful husband named Stu. And we've been married for 15 years, but together for 20 or 21 years, something like that. So a while.
And that being Stu McLaren, the entrepreneur that is helping thousands of people change their lives through memberships, right?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people know who my husband is, and I've always been a bit behind the scenes, and love being behind the scenes. So I'm just kind of getting used to coming out in front more. I'm all about the details and keeping the ship moving forward. But then since my book came out, Passion to Purpose, I've been sharing a lot more, just being open a lot more, sharing a lot more, coming onto lives, a lot more podcasts, things like that.
Well, I'm almost done with your book and I'm loving it so far, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But since this is a mental health podcast, I wanted to talk about one of the things you focus on is giving and charity and turning that passion into purpose and making it meaningful. And, in mental health and just in general, it's better to give than to receive. Like, we actually feel good when we give. And Christmas is coming up, so people really get into the giving spirit around Christmas. But we're trying to talk about maybe doing this all year round, right? So
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit about the mental health impact of giving in charity and being charitable and helping out? It doesn't have to be monetary, and I think you emphasize that a lot in your book as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So first thing I want to share too is, we all love to give. Like, I love to give, my husband likes to give, my family likes to give, but I think it's equally as important to also be able to receive something, right? Because if you think about it, if you've got to be open to receiving, because those other people are wanting to do the same and give and have an impact themselves too. So I think it's just equally important to give, but then being able to receive those gifts that come to you from other people in your community, your family and friends, because you don't want to rob them the gift of giving too, right? So I always encourage us to be good at receiving, and then be equally as good as giving as well. So for us as a family, yes, we like to give back. I teach my kids from a young age to always save your money, spend your money, and pay your money forward. So give it back somehow. So as a family, every month we pick a charity or a nonprofit, or we do something together where we give back a portion of our money together as a family. Because I think that's a big thing too, is it's not just about writing a check. It's about having that experience together and doing good with your money. So starting from young, and then also in our businesses, a couple of things that we do in our businesses for Stu and memberships, my husband, is he calls it the 1 month give back. So he encourages everybody to give 1 month of your income or your membership away to a charity of your choice, or to a nonprofit, or to a good cause. And they do that themselves with their company, and their 1 month actually sustains our charity, so it pays our overhead for our charity. So all of our donations can go to where, to what it's meant to go to, for our programs, for our different things that we do on the ground in Kenya. And then it's always just being kind. And this is one of the reasons why I wrote this book, is that Stu and I would speak on so many stages, and we would get off the stage and people would come up and say to us that, I don't have XYZ, or I don't have this much money, or I don't have a nonprofit, or I don't have a company. But people, you don't have to start a nonprofit. You don't have to start your own business. Like you had mentioned earlier, you can have an impact today just by the little things that we do, by championing other people in your community, by lifting up your team that works with you, by even smiling and saying thank you. Like even going to Starbucks, or if you're Canadian, Tim Hortons, and actually saying please and thank you. Like it drives me crazy when I'm at a store or anywhere, and there's just not a moment of gratitude or thankfulness or thank you or please. Those are the littlest things, but they make such a difference.
I'm a Muslim, and in Islam, even a smile is considered a charity. So there are so many people, so many stories of people that are, there's this one specific story of a man that was about to jump off of a bridge, and he had a note in his pocket that literally said, if even one person smiles at me and acknowledges me, I won't jump. And somebody happened to do that, and that's why he lived to tell about it.
Yeah.
And so it can be as small as that. A lot of people are hearing about what's happening in Afghanistan right now, but 20 years ago, when that whole 9/11 happened, my aunt and my uncle moved back to Afghanistan, and she saw such a need of all these learning disabled kids, the blind, the deaf, the handicapped, that were not going to school because schools felt like they were throwaways, right? They weren't going to spend money and time on them. So my aunt, being one person, became like the social worker for an entire state and wanting to do something. She did what you're doing. She started one school, and she would literally go around to different people's homes, pick them up and bring them to school, and offer the family money to, like, here, I'm giving you some money so that you can let your kid go, so they can learn something. And then they built things like little coasters and bracelets, kind of like the stuff that your students do. And so kind of your story, the whole time I'm reading your book, it kept reminding me of my aunt and how she was so moved by that. She didn't know what to do. She had no idea how to build a school. She did work as a teacher briefly in Afghanistan before we left. I mean, we all immigrated a long time ago because of the war, the initial war with the Russians. So she briefly taught like you did. And that passion for her was, I need to do something. These kids, they might be blind, they might be deaf, but they're still capable of producing something and not being abused by their families, because a lot of times those kids are a burden. And so the parents think that, well, you're no good to me, you're just a burden. So then a lot of them get abused. So she wanted to do something and get them out of there. And I know one of the reasons that you're moved is to end the trafficking in Africa, right? And that's for the girls, and trying to build schools to
Yeah, so it's funny because we've built, we're building our 15th school right now. So what I'm super proud of with our nonprofit is that we're very community led. So we work with organizations on the ground. We talk a lot to the government. The government funds our projects. So once we build the school, if Stu and I were to walk away and decide not to work on our Charity Village Impact anymore, thousands of kids would still go to school every day. There wouldn't be much of a transition. There'd be things they would miss and things that we just do for like field trips and such, but the main core part of getting an education would still be there. And that's really been important to me. And what we've learned over the years now in our 15th school is, we're building a girls' school, and this girls' school came from the need in the community. It came from talks to the government. It came from talks to the elders in the community and our team on the ground. And the reason why we've chosen a girls' school the reason that they chose a girls' school is because of what's happened during COVID. And, COVID has devastated so many people's lives. It's, crushed businesses. It's been horrific the last couple of years, and especially in the towns where, we're involved. And what's happening is a lot of those girls are now dropping out of high school because of early pregnancies, or they're, selling their bodies to make money for their family, to put food on the table. And so the community has voiced their want for a girls' school because it brings them to one spot. They'll feel safe there. They'll feel part of a community. And there's nothing, there's nothing more empowering than being surrounded by other women, and that safeness and all the hygiene and feminine products and all the things that comes with being a high school girl. It's hard, right? So coming into a school with girls, they think will help with that dropout rate, will help obviously with them, making better choices for their bodies, for their families, and for their future that way. So yeah, so it's our first girls' school. We've never done an all girls school. It's always been co-ed. This school will have, I like to call it a double decker. So it essentially will have 2 levels. So most of our schools have anywhere from 300 to 600 kids. And this one will have, I think it'll be over 600. It'll be 650 girls, all high school girls attending the same one. And we just hope that, it'll empower the girls and the women to make some healthy choices for themselves.
And we take education for granted in the West. And this is what I think a lot of people were so outraged in August when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, because that is one of the things that's going to impact the girls. Their education suffered before when they were in charge, and it's going to suffer now. And a lot of girls are not allowed to get an education. And it's so sad that the kids that are in the United States or even in Canada, they might not appreciate the free education that they have and all the resources that they have. And here you're seeing it, how important it is. Like, I remember going back in 2003, back to Afghanistan, and just taking pens and paper and little, cute little school supplies.
Yeah.
Kids were loving it. Just even getting a pencil was so meaningful for them. So I know how it feels for you to see the results and see the changes that these girls and the benefits that your school is, the impact it's making to the villages, I guess.
Well, it is, but it is to the villages, right? It's, to me, it's, and that's why when we started our nonprofit, we were kind of all over the place. And I felt like we were putting so many Band-Aids on things, and we weren't having sustainable change, or we weren't building like long lasting relationships and all the stuff that I love to do. So then when we ended in Kenya, and the relationships we've kind of formed now with the government, the community, it makes it so worthwhile, not because of, it makes it so worthwhile for the ripple effects that education has, right? So we started in medical and doing all these education, like anything that needed help, I was like, yes. And then when we realized we're not really helping, we're like, we're not helping at all. So we came back and then went back to the root of education. And me being, a teacher for 10 years and always having a passion for girls and education and knowing, what can come from it for their future. And then the ripple effect. So when these kids attend our school, it becomes not only about the kids, it helps their family, it helps the community. And in our very first school that we built, what I love to see is like other organizations have come in, or local organizations have come in and started little businesses. And then next to our first school now, there's like, I like to call it like a strip mall. Like, there's all these little stores, and there's a gentleman that sells coffee and tea, and there's a guy that sets up a charging station, and there's a barber, and there's all these other businesses that now come there because the school is thriving. And then what's even better is our school's being used for community meetings, for like mamas meet there to make crafts for their markets. And it becomes like this central place of hope that goes above and beyond the kids, but it starts with the kids, and it kind of ripple effects and has just so many other positive aspects for the community too.
Well, that's why I love the name of your company, Village Impact, because you truly are impacting an entire village. And they say it takes a village to raise a child, but in also raising the child can actually heal the village, right?
Yeah, you know what's funny? So we didn't start being called Village Impact, and for many years we were World Teacher Aid, and then we rebranded to Village Impact, which I absolutely love now. But it all is. I'm so proud of what we've done today. But it's like you said about your family. Like it all started with an idea on the couch and just wanting to help, and not really even, I didn't even really have a book on my vision board or building 15 schools. Like none of that was on my vision board, but I just started with wanting to help and, learn from other people and better myself selfishly too, and broadening my, how I think of things in different cultures and all that kind of things too. So start somewhere.
It does. And I think that's what fueled my aunt, because she saw the need, but she didn't have the skills or the resources. She just kept doing it until her school grew from one kid to many kids. I don't know. She sadly passed away a couple of years ago. So the school ended up kind of disbanding. But at the same time, she didn't have the government support. And right now, I mean, if anybody wanted to start something in Afghanistan, they're not going to get the support of the government. How crucial was it for you to have the support of the Kenyan government to help you establish these schools?
Yeah, you know what? For us and for my husband and I, like I personally wouldn't have it any other way. Because I think when you come into a project, getting everybody involved for change and hearing everybody's thoughts and opinions and ideas, and it's the collaboration that happens with them. So as much as it's the funding for me and knowing that I can walk away, it's also the collaboration and how we learn and grow as an organization too, because we come in like, I don't know much about the Kenyan education system. I know enough, but that is their, their country's thing and their culture and what they do. And so we're there to help in any way we can, but they really take lead on that. For us, it's definitely integral for us to have it. But again, it's for the funding, but then it's also the collaboration of what would be best for those students at that school, in each community, because each community is also very different. The schools are scattered around, and some communities, are a bit stronger than other communities where they don't have as much farming land or things like that. So every community is very different.
That sounds so interesting. One of the things you said in your book that I found really interesting was you said, passion is contagious. It has the power to ignite hearts and souls and to light you up in such a way that you'll be changed forever. How did you identify your passion, and how can you, what are some tips that you can give us and my audience about how to identify our passion?
Yeah. So you know what? I think maybe some of your listeners can relate to this. So I've always been passionate about travel. I'm like this crazy, adventurous soul, kind of a nomad that I think if I wasn't married to my husband and I wasn't an entrepreneur, I would be overseas teaching English and or working for the UN or something. But I'm grateful that I get to fill that now, being an entrepreneur and doing what I do. But for me, passion is so important because it brings out the very best of who you are, right? So before teaching, I was traveling overseas. I did my master's of education in Australia. I taught in these little islands in the northern Australia. I did all this stuff. And then I came to teaching, and I liked it, but I never loved it. And it was towards the end of those 10 years where I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And while I was, filling my travel bucket here and there and still traveling, I really missed that connection of, bonding with other cultures and learning from other families. Because prior to teaching, I lived with a Thai family for 2 months, and I loved it, and I learned so much, and I was doing all these things where I just really loved it. And then I stopped doing them. Like I was still traveling, but there's many different types of traveling, right? So I love a good luxury getaway, don't get me wrong, but then I also love being adventurous on a motorbike, going across Morocco and trying to find a place to stay. So I like all these different aspects of travel. So when I was teaching, we were still traveling, but I don't think it was really filling my bucket of this adventurous connection side of travel. And then that's when, I realized that, I liked teaching, but I didn't really love it. And I wasn't really getting lit up like I was when I was traveling and doing those things that I really loved. So for me, it was going back to that travel and connecting with different cultures and families and revisiting that. And that's kind of where Village Impact came into light, I guess you could say, because Stu and I were sitting on a couch one Friday night, an exciting Friday night, and I was having a glass of wine and Stu was having his water because he doesn't drink. And we watched Oprah's Big Give, and I was like, oh man, I'm like, I want to do what Oprah's doing in these, where she was transforming these communities, but I want to do it overseas. I want to do it in Africa. I want to do it somewhere else that I had traveled to growing up. And then, long story short, we managed to fundraise a bunch of money. We took it down to El Salvador. We helped at a community there. Then we eventually ended up in Ghana and then Kenya. But I just went back to me following what truly lit me up. And what truly lit me up was those unique travel experiences of bonding with other communities and bonding with other cultures and learning about that. So that was kind of where it was birthed. So what I would say, if you're listening, maybe you're like me and you knew what you were passionate about, and then you kind of stop doing it for a while because life gets busy. You have kids, you start a career, and you kind of forget about it. So an activity that I've shared with people in the past is to draw. It's really simple, but if you draw a straight line and you call it your passion timeline, and you put on there like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, however old you are, but then go back to what you were doing when you were 20. Go back to what you were doing when you were 30 or 40 or 50, and take a look. And don't just do this quickly, like at a desk and think about it. Take a couple of hours out of your day to kind of revisit what you were doing then. And then pick one thing from that time and figure out how you're going to put it into your life. And that isn't about totally like overhauling and changing your life. It's about sprinkling it back in. So it's about taking a class, something that you love to do. Maybe it was dance or art, or maybe it's connecting with a friend that you lost touch with that did a lot of sports with you. Like, there's one friend that I have that she is all into figure skating. She recently picked it up, and now she's doing synchro figure skating every Monday night, because that's what she did when she was a kid, but she decided to get back into it and she still loved it. The one thing I would say though is, as you go back and you revisit those passions, it's okay if you find that you're not as passionate about them as you were when you were 20 or 30, because passions change, right? So if you get to that point and you realize there's nothing, then I encourage you to find something that kind of, when you hear somebody talk about something you're interested in and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting, grab a friend and go and follow. It's like following the breadcrumbs, right? But the thing is, you got to make the time. You've got to make the time to do it. And when you do make the time to do it, it can totally change your relationships, change a lot of things, because you're doing what you love. And when you're doing what you love, you're lit up and you really are the best version of who you are. And then people want to be around you, right? I think of my kids, when I'm doing accounting, we have accountants and bookkeepers, but I have to do some parts of it, right? I hate it. I hate all that stuff. And I'm like probably the grumpiest version of myself. And my daughter will be like, oh no, mom's doing some numbers again. Like, because we've got to do stuff that we love. And I think that's what'll bring out our best version of us.
And you're right. When we feel excited about something and we're talking about it, we might not be able to necessarily go at the level you did and take it all the way and help people at that level.
And you don't have to. You totally don't even have to do that. For me, I've always been a bit of a big picture and go, but you totally don't have to do that, right? Like, it's just about acknowledging it and making time for it and enjoying it and enjoying life, right? Like, we're here not to do things we don't love. And too often, too many of us let life happen to us instead of taking control and planning it and putting it in and just sprinkling it in and then seeing where it goes. Like I said, I didn't plan on building 15 schools, but I followed that inkling of like going back to my deeper travel connections and spending time with other communities and doing more of that. And that eventually led to where we are today.
And a lot of people, like, for the holidays, they will go and volunteer at a soup kitchen, and they might go and volunteer and go visit the elderly. Like, if it wasn't COVID, people would go into community centers and just work with other kids and the elderly, and the elderly would go into the schools and read. Those are passions that you're turning into purpose. And I wanted to kind of have you explain that a little bit, because like I said, we've been talking about all these big projects that people can do. What are some little things people can do? Like we talked about, like the volunteering or giving in charity or even just smiling at somebody. What's on that?
Yeah. So it's funny, as you were sharing those examples, they were some of the examples I had on there where, now things are opening up a little, depending on where you live, but things are beginning to open up a little bit more. An idea that one of Stu's customers actually has done, my husband, is she's a big painter, and she was taking her painting from just in her studio into her audience online, but then into an elderly home or an old age home where, there's people that want to still paint. So she would go once a month for free and volunteer her time to paint with these, lovely men and women that didn't have too much to do and are just loving it. So it's taking your passion to do more good with it. So another example, with ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson, he's a great friend of ours. He's been a friend of Stu and I's for many, 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 many years. And when he started ClickFunnels, the day before he started it, he's like, I'm going to donate $1 of every funnel to your organization. And that's when he started. And now it's like a multi-million, probably even bigger company. And he still continues to donate to our cause. But that's just a way of him using his company and what he loves to do in building funnels to do more good. Another example is for this lady, Casey Hope, another tribe or a part of Stu's community. And she cooked meals, but then for every meal or for every meal plan or every pack that she did, she would donate and buy a meal for a child. I think it was somewhere in South America, some country in South America. So like you would buy food for yourself, and then she would buy food for a child in I forget where it was, but the concept of something by here, and then she would help somewhere else overseas. It's like the shoe company that you buy one shoe. I think it's Keds. You buy one shoe and they buy a shoe for someone overseas. So there's just so many ways that you can use your passion to do more good, right? And then not take any money for it. It's just like spreading the love. It's spreading what you're really good at with other people that might need it. It's even jumping on, if you're really talented at singing and you love singing, it's jumping online and asking anybody to join with you because they really love it too and singing. So those are just some quick few examples.
And you feel so lit up when you're doing something like that, and you're giving out of your passion because this is something you really enjoy. Like when I was going into choosing between a doctorate program, you could either go the PhD route and become a professor, or you can do the PsyD route and become more clinical. Mm-hmm. I was like, there's no way I would want to be a professor. The idea would just, But at the same time, I know that I like to teach. So I've gone over to doing more online courses and doing mini courses, and just to reach as many people and share my knowledge instead of standing in front of a podium and a college classroom and teaching. So it's just a matter of tweaking it into something that resonates with you. And like I said, it could be volunteering, it could be cleaning up trash, it could be helping your neighbor, whatever. There's
and it can change, right? It can change depending on where you are in your life or what you're doing, whether it's more business or family focused or for yourself. But I think the most important thing is threading it in your life, like in different ways, because it's just a great experience to do together. Like when my daughter and I and my son Stu, every Christmas Eve, we go to Tim Hortons and we pay $100 to the cashier, and we watch everyone come in and we pay for like their coffee and teas, but it's all like they don't know who it is, and we just sit there and they're like, oh well, who did it? And they don't say, like, we just sit behind, and it's just like fun little things like that, and it's just fun to do. And that builds, it builds our relationship as a family closer. It brings us closer. And then when you do things like that with your community, it brings your community closer, and then your staff and your team. Because I think everyone has a good heart, and a lot of people want to get behind something that's bigger than themselves. And oftentimes they're just looking for ways to do it, or how they can do it. And if they can jump on board with another organization or, another initiative, then people want to. And I think that's the thing too. A lot of people don't share what they're doing, or they don't share. And if you don't share it, you're not going to get the message out and attract those people to help you with it. And I think it's inspiring when people share how they're giving and helping others. And then at the same time, doing things without nobody knowing is great too. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, you've got to share too, because it also inspires people to do it and gets the word out.
Well, we do get inspired by those people. Who was it? There was that billionaire that started
Mhm.
the duty-free shops, and it
Yeah,
decided to give everything away. I thought that was such an inspirational story.
yeah, absolutely. I know Stu shares about that a lot. And it's so true, right? We don't, there's so much, money is an amazing thing. And there's so many goodness that can come out of giving funds away or helping others with it as well.
Well, I did a recent Clubhouse talk about fear and overcoming fears, and somebody jumped on and said, "What about the fear of success? I'm afraid of being wealthy. I'm afraid of losing who I am and not being spiritual anymore, and that wealthy people are evil and only poor people are they're who's really connected to God and to being spiritual." And I was like, but look at all the billionaires that are not the ones that are going into space just to, whatever, but the people that are donating all their money, the people that are using that money. And I love something that you and Stu are doing is living on that 90-10 principle. Um,
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that because that really inspired me when I heard about it.
Yeah. So first of all, I think, Stu and I think we're on the same page where, money is an amazing tool to do more good. It will never change who you are. I really think if you're a good person before you have money, you'll be the same person when you have money. You'll just do more good things with it. So for my husband and I, we've always been inspired by giving back and having an impact. I mean, I remember when we had our first launch and we made a sum of money and we gave a lot of it. We actually gave a big chunk to my brother to help him purchase his first home. So we've always given that way, but we've always been inspired by the 80 or the 90-10. So you live on 90, give away 10, and that was how we started when we started with our businesses and things like that. But as the businesses have grown, our goal is, and we're not there yet, we're still working on it, but we want to live on 10% of our income and give 90% of it away. And that doesn't mean like, living frugally, and it means still living the lifestyle that we want to live, but then making more so we can do that and still giving more away. So our kind of goal that we're working towards, and like I said, we're not totally there yet, but we're on our way, is to live on 10% of what we make and then give away 90%. So that's our goal as a couple, or a family, I should say.
I love that. I think that's so, and this is where you can make such a great impact. And that's my goal. I do not mind, like money amplifies whoever you are. Like if you're a greedy person to begin with, it'll magnify that when you have
Yeah,
it.
you're gonna be even more greedy. But if you're good, like you and I, like think a lot of people out there, there's a lot of people out there that are doing so much good with their money. And I just encourage, we've got to focus on the good, right? I was saying this to my daughter this morning. I'm like, focus on the good, and more good will come. Like on our walk to school, because I don't even know what she's complaining about, and I'm just like, no, you got to focus on the good. leave the negative stuff behind.
Yeah, our mindset, it's really important. And there's a lot that we can do. And tying it all back to mental health, it's like we need that balance in our life, the mental, spiritual, physical, just all of it needs to be connected. And if we're just focused on everything being external and not really going inward and checking in with ourselves, and there's going to be an imbalance. And if we're constantly giving, like I do believe in not going around with fists closed. I mean, if you go with both hands open, like you said, receive
Yeah.
equally, and
Yeah.
then take that money and then give it toward, spread it around to helping other people. Or it could be your time, it could be donating clothes, it could be, cleaning your closet and decluttering.
Yeah.
Um, and
Or
helping.
jumping on board with another existing nonprofit or a charity or a foundation. Like, you don't have to start your own charity. There's so many out there that, would probably appreciate the help or jumping in. It's just finding those people that are aligned with what that thing, the goal, or what it is that lights you up.
I love your idea of, like, I remember being on the bridge and people would pay your toll and then you go in and they're like, oh, your toll was paid for. And how
Yeah.
good does it make you feel? Like that was probably like $200 back then.
Yeah.
Even if you can like do that, as far as, I love your idea of buying the gift cards and just lighting everybody's faces up during the holiday season by just
Yeah.
buying them a cup of coffee. Or like you said, finding trustworthy organizations. That's the problem when it comes to charity, though. There aren't a lot that are trustworthy. So finding trustworthy organizations that are doing the work that you want to promote, like Village Impact. And I donate to Islamic Relief because they go around the
Yeah.
world and really help Muslims and non-Muslims. They help everybody around the world. But whatever charity that really speaks to you, that goes along with your passion, even if you can save up $5 a week and then donate that on a
Yeah.
regular basis, what a huge difference that makes.
Oh, totally. Even, something we do, the kids love to do is the whole, and you don't see as many of them anymore, but the quarter machines. And we would stick tape on like the quarter machines with quarters. So then the kids loved that because it's like, the kids always love going to the grocery store. And then there's one store, I think, in our town that still has them. And then they would get a quarter to get their gum or candy or bouncy ball, whatever they are, right? But it's just little things like that, or it's we've left kindness notes on people's cars before, or it's even in my Airbnb, I always have a welcome message and have their names on the chalkboard, because people just want to feel loved, right? They want to feel heard, and we can do that. We don't have to start all these big businesses in a charity. Like just showing up and being yourself is enough as well.
I know one time we stayed at this place in Sedona, and we went and they had this cute little basket with our names on it with a little
Yeah.
welcome card, and just like maybe cookies or something really small. And like, oh my gosh, what a sweet touch this is. It just really affected us. So yeah, you're right.
Yes, it's just little things. It's all about the little things.
It is. So getting back to your book, like I said, I'm just the whole reading it, I'm inspired in so many ways. And what motivated you to write a book like that? And well, what was the reason that you did it? I mean, it's such a huge task to take on, to write a book like that. It's not just about charity. It's not about Village Impact. It really is. Although you talk about how it led to Village Impact, it really is about mindset and creating, empowering you to be your best self and to put yourself out there. So can you talk a little bit about your book now?
Yeah. So my book, Passion and Purpose,
Can you show it again?
yeah, for sure. I have it here. And I actually crazy. We've sold over 10,000 copies of it, which is like my publisher, Hay House, Reed, the CEO, sent me a message last week and was like, just letting you know, we crossed 10,000 copies. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, really? Like, because you write a book, and it was one of the most, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, I remember before it came out, the night before, Stu and I were in a hotel and I did an interview, and I didn't feel good about it. Some days I just didn't feel good about it. And I shut the computer down and I crawled into the covers and I cried and cried and cried. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think we should call Reed and cancel the book coming out. I don't think I can do it. And I all the self-doubt and so many emotions writing a book. But to be honest, it wasn't on my radar. And then Reed from Hay House, the CEO of Hay House Publishing, asked me to a couple of times. And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm ready yet. But then the more and more we got off the stages of sharing about our nonprofit before COVID hit, more and more people kept saying to me that they couldn't have an impact because they didn't have enough money, or they didn't have a business. And then that was I'm like, you don't have to do that. And so my goal with the book was to show people that, you don't have to have a charity. You can still have an impact in somebody's life by doing what you love, but then almost showing the importance of doing what you love. Because I felt like there's so many, I'll say women, because I speak to men in there too, but I'm a woman that have gone through this journey. And there's just so many women out there that get stuck, right? Or they get into this spot where they just feel like they've lost themselves, and they don't know how to connect with themselves anymore. Like, they've had their kids, and their kids are in school, and they go to school, and then they get home and they're like, right? Like, where am I? And they feel like they left themselves behind 15 years ago. And my biggest thing for me is for women to realize that, and men, that it's just so important to follow what you love. You have to and it doesn't mean your whole life changes, but you have to do things in your life that you love and that you're passionate about. And then we can use those little passions to have impacts. No impact is too big or too small, right? Yes, we've built a charity and raised a ton of money, but that's just as important as saying please and thank you at at the grocery store. Do you know what I mean? There's no, there, like having an impact, there's no better or best. You're still having an impact in what you do. And for me, I wrote it for those women that have forgotten themselves along the journey of motherhood and career and things like that. But then also to show people that, you know, having an impact isn't just about writing a check. It isn't, you know, and then leaving. Having an impact is really leaving your legacy. Like it's all those little things that we do today that have an impact that lead to our legacy. And I think too often we forget that too. We forget about the, you know, how do we want to leave the world? Like how, and it's, again, it's not about money. The more important thing is how we make people feel, right? There's a great quote, and I have it in my book and I can't think of it, but it's how we make people feel. And that's what I love to do through my Lady Strength community, through our charity, through our Airbnb with our little notes, right? That's what I love to do. And yeah, so I wrote it to show people that you don't have to start a nonprofit. You can do other ways, but then also hopefully to inspire women to get out there and do what they love to do and show how important it is for your relationship, for your family, and for yourself.
So many people might say, well, it's just me. I'm just one person. I don't really have a lot of backup. I don't have a lot of support, but it makes me think about Gandhi with one person. It started off with one person. He changed the trajectory of an entire nation.
Yeah.
Greta Thunberg, you know, she was one person protesting for a whole year before people started noticing what she was doing. And she motivated an entire world to stand up for climate change.
Yeah.
You, my aunt, you just got up and did it. And then you ended up having other people support you in your vision because you were willing to take that risk and to go to the next step and actually do something.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's funny when I have these interviews because I had no plan. I had no master plan. I just literally followed what lit me up and what I love to do and acknowledged that and then followed it. And I mean, I had no idea how to start a nonprofit. Like I didn't know anybody that had a charity or a nonprofit, but I Googled, I found a lawyer to help me set it up. And like, it was just one foot in front of the other. And you know, what's funny, Stu and I just came back from this incredible experience where we climbed this mountain 17 times, which is the equivalent to climbing Mount Everest. And it's put on by 29029 Everesting, they call it. And the event came from the Spanx founder, Sarah. Her husband, Jesse, is one of the founders of it. And he's put these events together, and Stu and I did it. And it was one of the hardest things we did. But you know what? Every time we got to the bottom of the mountain, so we had to do it in 36 hours. So we hiked for 34 hours straight, pretty much. Or no, not straight. We kind of went back to our tent for 2 or 3 hours. But it was one of the hardest endurance things I've ever done. And I mean, I love working out and riding the bike, but it was really hard and very intimidating. And we would stand at the bottom of the mountain and I'd be like, okay, one more time. And it's like, just start going, right? Because no one turns around and comes back down the mountain, but it's kind of like, you know, life and building a business. It was just one more time up the mountain. If I can make it one more time up, that's one off my list. And then we come down the gondola. And then we'd look up and I'm like, okay, one more time. And like up. And some days it was like, okay, I only have to make it to the drink station. Like if I can just get to the drink station with the yummy drinks and snacks, then I'm good. And then like I would get there and then I'd be like, okay, now I just need to make it to the top. And it's like with starting a charity or starting a business or anything, it's like, it's great to think of the big picture. And I think we should, but then it's also okay just to plan for 3 months, right? And just do one foot in front of the other, in front of the other. And then it grows over time. Like nothing happens overnight. Like what we've talked about today has been, and the book has been like 12 years of my life, right? Like the book starts from like basically me leaving my teaching career. And then all the lessons we've learned with family and entrepreneurship and impact and like for the last 10 years. So I think oftentimes, like we hear so many times, people see the end, but there was a journey before it came to this point. And it started with Oprah on the couch, drinking wine, not knowing how to even start a charity.
It always starts with Oprah.
I know. Someone else said that the other day too. It's so true, right? One day maybe I'll meet Oprah and I can tell her the impact she's had.
Oh, if you meet her, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we
She's
should.
amazing. She's inspired me. I remember my whole 90s, every day after work, I would watch her, and I feel like she did more for my mental health training than my programs did. So
Yeah. Well,
amazing.
it's so important, right? And you said it probably like taking care of ourselves is number one. And oftentimes with like, with my kids, they see me go to the gym, they see Stu and I ride the bike, and it's healthy for them to see that we're taking care of ourselves and time for us. And my daughter, even the other day, is like, "Oh, mom, are you having an Amy day?" And I'll be like, "I have my Amy days where it's just me. And like I sit by myself for a few, or I go for a walk, and it's like, because like what you talked to, our mental health is so important. And I'm nowhere near an expert at it, but I do know that we have to honor what we love to do and then honor and take care of that and take care of ourselves.
I remember before, when I first heard this term about how we need to put ourselves first over our children and prioritize ourselves before even our husbands and then our kids. I was like, wow, that doesn't sound right because that's not how I was brought up. That sounds so
Yeah.
selfish. And the older you get, the more you realize if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't give in and refill that cup of yours, you're not going to be a good mom or a good wife or a good
So
CEO
true.
or a good anything, right? So you should have
Mhm.
Amy days or Nafisa
Yeah,
days or
absolutely.
whoever days and just take that time and take care.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we're planning for our year now. Like we plan a couple of years out. Running multiple companies, you have to plan some things further out. But like when we do our calendar for the year, it's like, okay, when we look at it, it's like Stu and I's single stuff that we like to do by our, like my stuff, his stuff goes on first, and then we do our couple stuff, and then it's like our family stuff, and then it's work stuff. So it's like us by ourselves, and then as a couple, and then like all of us, and then the company, because it's
That's
like,
how it should be.
yeah,
Exactly what you
right.
said, because it should be you first, and then it should be your partner, and
Yeah.
then the kids. But it's often flipped for a lot of people. They make their kids their world. And then in 18 years, the kids grow up, they leave, and then they have nothing. There's nothing the
Yeah.
foundation hasn't been laid at all.
No, and you've got to, and I think it's so, and this really gets me wrong. I think you have to do that to show your kids, right? Like
Right.
I'm really with my kids, I'm like, mom and dad have a date weekend this weekend. I have my friend time. Like, yes, I take you riding, and yes, I take you to soccer, and I do this, but I might miss one practice because I want to connect with my friend, and that's important. And I think so many women, they get lost, but it's like, I'm always there for my kids, but it's okay. It's okay to miss one or two practices here or there, or because you're fulfilling your bucket and you're filling that bucket up. And it's just so important.
But you're also teaching Marla and Sam that they need to
Mhm.
take care of themselves and
Yeah.
that it's important for them to take that time. And that's so invaluable because we ultimately end up raising entitled kids if we end up sacrificing ourselves so much that
Mhm.
we can never miss a game or they can never feel disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of kids, what advice would you have for your younger self, the self that you were in college or the one before when you were a teenager? What advice would you have when it comes to living a purposeful life?
I thought about this. So there's not, I believe I followed my crumbs, having the strength and knowing it's okay to be you and yourself. Like, so for me, the one thing that I kind of regret growing up is we moved from the UK when I was 10, and I don't sound like it. I sound fully Canadian, but I'm not, I'm British more than Canadian. And that all my family live in Oxford, England, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews. Like it's only my mom and dad and my brother that are here in Canada. And I remember coming home from school and and saying things the Canadian way because I didn't want my British accent. And now being older, I wish I hadn't have done that. I wish I had, not tried to lose my accent. I wish I had been proud and confident with who I was. So I would just encourage people to own who you are. Don't ever change yourself for anybody else, because there is only one of us, right? There's only one of you. There's only one of me, and we all have these unique gifts. And too often, too many people change themselves to fit in, but don't change yourself. Like always, stay true to who you are.
I totally can relate to that. We immigrated here when I was 9, and it was the same thing. There was this, first of all, we wanted to learn to speak English right away, so our parents didn't know what we were talking about. And then we were embarrassed to speak a different language. We wanted to get rid of our accents as quickly as possible. And now I wish that I could speak fluently and be able to. Now I sound like a child when I speak my language. So that I could never do anything professional with it. So I can really relate to that. And I think every immigrant kind of goes through that. You want to assimilate as soon as possible, and then later on you realize.
I know, and I it's so frustrating because then I met a family. We were in Vancouver over the winter, and I met this little boy, and he was only like 10, and he moved from the UK when he was 4, and he sounded like he just moved, and I'm like, how is this? I'm like, I moved when I was 10, and I lost my accent, and he sounded like he just moved yesterday, and I'm like. Oh, but I wish I did now because I love the UK and I love where I was born and obviously my family that still lives there. And I mean, Marla's the first generation Canadian. But I wish I hadn't have tried so hard to lose that.
I know my parents wanted us to continue to speak our language and continue to hold on to the culture, and we fought it, and I wish we didn't. So
yeah.
Totally
stay true to you. True to you. Stay true to you.
Stay true to you. I love that. So where can people find you and connect with you if they wanted to reach out, or and then where can they find your book?
Yeah, so you can find out me on Instagram. It's Amy McLaren. I'm most active on Instagram, but I am on Facebook at Amy McLaren. And then on my link in Instagram has all the links to find all the things that I'm involved in. My book is available at all the bookstores and then on Amazon, of course, too.
Well, your book is wonderful. I've really enjoyed reading it. Thank you so much for making the time. You're such a busy person. I cannot believe the number of businesses and charities, your charity that you're involved in and all that you're doing. Congratulations on the 10,000. I hope it's another 100,000 more, and for you to continue to raise money for your schools, because you're doing an amazing job with that. That's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Amy's passion just jumps out of her, doesn't it? So now I'd love to hear from you. I'm curious, out of everything we talked about during this interview, what's your one takeaway? What are some key lessons that you're going to take away and apply to your life today? Share your comments below or visit transforminganxiety.com/podcast and share your comments there. Until next time, keep prioritizing your mental health as you build the life you love. Thank you so much for joining. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Until next time.